and I'm here on Facebook Live primarily to celebrate the solar eclipse tomorrow on June 10th, which shows us which supports us in bringing in the new. The lunar eclipse we had not long ago was letting go of the old, and now we're bringing in the new, and that's so exciting. And what better way to see that happening is by being in my permaculture garden. And I'm going to talk about grounding and transforming what no longer serves us into something new and transformative. And so the best example I have for that is composting. Because composting, as you know, takes what we no longer need, all those things we would have put in the trash, like eggshells, coffee grounds, veggie scraps, fruit scraps, cardboard, newspapers, old dry leaves, and we turn it into black gold. You know, they say that our food, our vegetables and fruits, are so much less nutritious now, even organic, because of the soil fertility. But this is the way, through composting, to bring the nutrients back to the soil like it was decades ago. So permaculture and organic gardening is one way to do that. So I compost the traditional way when it's during the growing season and it's hot, but when the season changes, I go ahead and do what's called sheet mulching, and I won't go into that now, but there are two ways to really transform your soil, just like we're using our soul from the light of our soul to transform us energetically. So I feel there's a relationship there. So right now what I want to talk about quickly is cover crops, because that's the other way that we can enrich our soil with use of plants, in particular leguminous plants like peas and beans and annual rye and clover. And in this cover crop mix I have also a daikon radish, which is called a driller radish, because it drills into the soil. So any compactness that there is in your soil is mitigated by the daikon or driller radish drilling into the soil. And here, I'm going to pull one out. So I pulled this one out, and you can see that, if I had left it in, it would have gotten longer and bigger. As you can see, it drills into the soil, this daikon radish does. And there are microorganisms or bacterium on the plant that is able to take nitrogen that is abundantly present in the air and bring it into the plant through the roots. That's called nitrogen fixation. So there are other plants here, such as you can see, the peas here. These are wando peas, and they're growing with the potatoes that I have, and the cover crop. And wherever there's cover crop, the peas are growing more prolifically. But one thing about cover crops is if you really want to bring the nutrient, especially the nitrogen, into the soil, what you have to avoid is letting everything go to seed. Even, if you plant beans and peas, and my objective now is not so much to have beans and peas, but to enrich the soil. You don't necessarily want to let it go to seed, because the nitrogen that's available in the roots from the microorganisms and the nitrogen fixation there goes up, energetically it goes up to the flowers, and then it won't be available for the soil.
So you call that chop and drop?
Yeah, and so chop and drop. So I don't want any of this to go to seed. So what I do is I chop everything up. I chop it or mow it or like that, and then you just drop it like that. And then when it decomposes, it'll go back into the soil, especially at the end of the season when I'm going to use a system called sheet mulching. But I can't go into that now. I'll do something on it later.
So that's almost symbolic of like not letting everything go to seed, of like not spreading ourselves so thin and letting some things go to compost.
Actually, that's good analogy, but also the importance of grounding, because we're connected to the earth. And so we are embodying, just like in our physical self, we're upgrading our bodies through our energetic system, through our chakras and our DNA. We need to be grounded as we do that. So what I'm talking about is how we ground and enrich the earth. We need to be so connected to the earth as we embody, because you know this ascension process is not just about spirituality, but embodying it, embodying the light, the new light that's coming in. So this is a dynamic accumulator. Anything that has a long root system that goes deep into the ground and brings the nutrients into the ground, up through the roots and into the leaves of the plant. And then that's how you get, and I'm going to do sheet mulching later. So whenever you see anything like this, like here, there's some flowering going on, I'm going to cut it, and eventually I'm going to chop it all down, because this is taking the nitrogen from the roots, from the earth, from the grounding, and bringing it all up to form the seeds and the fruit. So even with something like the beans, here's some beans here. You know, this is delicious when we have these tender bush beans, but when my primary objective is to enrich the soil. So if I let this go to fruit, which I think I will because I have so much cover crop here, it's really not going to be nitrogen fixing, because the nitrogen will go from the roots where it was activated by the microorganisms up to the leaves and the fruit that we eat. So, but then we'll eat that, you know, we'll eat the nitrogen and use it for our DNA and our upgrade, and then if we compost it, it'll go back. But really, eating the peas and eating the beans are secondary. So I am not going to let any of this go to seed, or maybe a little bit will go to seed, but not much. So I could talk for so long about this, but really I just wanted to share my piece of artwork, because in permaculture, it's more than just gardening. You're creating both beauty and function through guilds. And guilds are relationships of plants. It's companion gardening on steroids, because everything works together in a beautiful system. I can talk more about that later, but some of the perennials that I'm now adding will be like a grapevine, will be next year these potatoes will be taken out and the soil will be enriched, and I'm going to do asparagus, and there's strawberries and rhubarb, and I have perennial onions over there that I'm going to bring into the beds where the potatoes are. So they're going to, and I'll do much more. And then in between all those perennials, then that's where I interplant the annuals. But the nice thing about perennial gardening is that you can create a food forest that comes back every year, instead of just, you know, looking like nothing at the end of the season. So anyway, and that way I can, you know, always have something without working so hard. And I can make my stuffed grape leaves and rhubarb delicacies like pie and jam with the strawberry. But anyway, this is just really to celebrate the solar eclipse and bringing in the new as we transform the old. We're transforming the old into something beautiful.
Yeah, say more about that. We have 10 people watching right now because I've been sharing it. So
Okay.
say more about how this all interconnects to, you know, there's potatoes here and other plants, and we each almost represent a different plant working together. So how can we be more like nature?
Well, first of all, I think we need to be in nature a little bit more so that we can observe how nature works. And really, permaculture is about mimicking nature, observing nature and putting its principles into practice. And so yes, each of us has our own unique perspective and gift. We're all unique. And when we bring the uniqueness together, we're like a permaculture guild that is, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's so symbiotically a guild. It's like I said, it's like companion planting on steroids. So that's how we can be, is to get together in groups and share our gifts. And for me, this is creating art. This is like artwork for me, and being in the garden and creating a permaculture garden is a way to ground into the earth through the feet, through the earth star chakra, and enrich the earth, who is also evolving and ascending with us. And so as we ground, we can upgrade all of our chakras from the base through the root. But remember, without the grounding, it'll be like these leguminous plants that if it goes high up the plant, like the crown chakra, without being grounded, we're not going to fix the nitrogen into the soil. So that just reminds me of that analogy. But we have a lot of traumas in ourselves, in our body, in our chakras, that need to be released, just like composting. And through working through our chakras into the earth star chakra, we can compost these traumas into something that's beautiful, and that is like shadow work that helps us evolve and transform. So I guess that if you have any thoughts on that, that's how I look at it. Everybody has a new perspective, a different perspective.
Can you tell us how you've slowly changed the soil over time, and
yes.
what you use, like horse manure, etc.?
Oh yes, so what I use for sheet mulching is horse manure. I use newspaper that I shred up, papers that I shred up. I use dry leaves. These are the carbon components. And the horse manure and weeds, like here, I just started a new compost pile, and there's lots of weeds. Weeds without seeds, because they're brand new weeds. Vegetable scraps, eggshells, coffee grounds, things that many people, if they don't compost, would just throw away. A lot of times I'll go to like natural grocers and get a bag of their vegetable scraps, and they give me a lot, so that goes a long way. I often use that in sheet mulching, which I won't go into right now because it would take a long time. But sheet mulching is a really, really wonderful way of composting that I often use at the end of the season.
So for symbolism, how does that relate to honoring the darkness and honoring things that we're letting go of, because we can use that energy?
Yeah, well, that's so important, because we think that the things that have traumatized us in life, which is just inherent to a polarized system that we are moving out of, because we're moving out of the age of Pisces, which was really about separation and fear, which taught us lessons, so I'm not saying that's bad. We're moving into the age of Aquarius, the cycle of Aquarius, which is about unity and oneness. So we need that to create the new. We are letting go of that old cycle, the cycle of all these things after they die down. They have no more use, so they get a second use just by being recycled into compost and being turned into black gold to really enrich the earth, which is something we really need to do, because we're told our soil is so bad now that our vegetables aren't that nutritious. Well, it's because of the way we, practice gardening or even agriculture. So we need to move more into regenerative systems such as permaculture, or use some of the permaculture practices. So, and that comes from nature. Permaculture is a system designed developed by Bill Mollison, and he came up with permaculture through the observation of nature. That was his teacher, was just nature, natural systems. So yeah, that's, the trauma is there to uplift us, and we don't ignore it, we honor it by transmuting it, by transforming it through our inner work, through our spiritual practices, and through our going from the inside out. So,
why don't you tell us about the book that you're working on?
Oh, okay. Well, I am working on a book that is called Nourishing Your Light Body. and it will be greatly informed by my knowledge of both permaculture, nutrition, and my inner work and spiritual practice, and my experience as an ambassador to the universe and as a starseed and light worker. But what that means is that we do have a body called the light body that is part of our soul, and as we ascend into higher states of beingness, of consciousness, like what is happening in the ascension process, we're bringing that, literally bringing the light, not only from the soul, but from the galactic energies, like the photonic light that is very strong right now, into our body, through the crown, down the chakras, down through our feet to the Earth Star chakra. And we are literally ascending with the earth. So as much as we can be with the earth, we are going to ascend with the earth. So really, your inner work, and just being your true self through your inner work, your spiritual practices, and creating a new earth, that is how we're going to nourish our light body. So I have over 30 years of experience as being a registered dietitian, and I worked in dis-ease care in the medical system. So now I want to upgrade that and transform it into working with the new earth light body as we are moving into Homo luminous from Homo sapiens. Some of you may have heard that before. Because remember, so long ago there were the Neanderthal men, people, and we have evolved from Neanderthal to Homo sapiens, and our next evolutionary step is Homo luminous. So that is bringing the light body into our physical vessel through the DNA, because we've been programmed to believe that our DNA is the 2-strand, but in reality it's more than that. Our junk DNA upgrades us to that 12th strand, and that is what we are doing through our connection to the earth, through our new system of growing food and nourishing the soil and the earth, and through our awareness of doing our inner work and bringing it out to the world in our authentic beingness. So for many, you may not understand that, but many understand that and more. But it's something that we are gradually moving into, because we don't want to have stayed the Neanderthal man. So just like now, we don't want to stay Homo sapiens. We want to ascend with the new cycle coming in with the age of Aquarius, as we're exiting the age of Pisces, and bring that light body in. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. And it's all about light. It's about photosynthesis. It's about the food cycle, the nitrogen cycle.
And this is your book?
Yeah, that's the book. So I'm going to integrate both sides of the brain, because we have been programmed to be in separation and really just focus on the masculine. So now we're going to bring in both sides, and that's important. That'll be a big part of it. And movement too can upgrade our DNA, as I learned from Amber. Well, I already knew that, but then Amber said, who was a yoga teacher that I went to a class, she said she read a book. It's about Move Your DNA, and I think the author is Katie Bowman, and she was a movement specialist. And I already knew that, but then to know that somebody wrote a book about it just was very validating and powerful for me. So,
yeah, so we have Deidre and Christina and my friend Melissa, as well as Shannon and others watching, like Barbara and several others. So thanks for your comments. Several people are interested in reading your book and appreciate your knowledge. To end, will you just walk us through everything that's in here? Because I think it'd be interesting, because it's hard to tell on camera.
Okay, so a lot of this is cover crop. And before it would have been really hard compacted dirt.
Because we're out here in Pueblo West.
Yeah, here in Pueblo West. And so these are bush beans that are doing well, growing with a cover crop. And I've noticed that, look how this is here. I'm letting this go to flower because I have so much here anyway. I'm going to let some of it go to flower and eat it. This is a wando pea. But notice how the wando peas that are in the cover crop are growing much better than the wando peas that are growing without cover crop. So I put some more seeds here and they'll do better. And so over here, these are a bunch of potatoes, and I love potatoes because I'm here in Pueblo West, and if I can put potatoes out there outside the fence, and the animals won't eat potatoes, but almost everything else they're going to eat. And I have a lot of wando peas around here. And
I like how you just put them all together instead of having to put them in rows.
Right, it's nice because that's how the plants work together, you know. In our system of agriculture and gardening, we tend to do monoculturing and just separate everything. But the relationship gardening, permaculture is like relationship design. So here is some potatoes and then the wando peas, and there's some strawberries. These are volunteer plants. They're probably some kind of winter squash like kaboka. This is, you know, and I'm not focusing at all on annuals, but I got a cucumber, and then I have a tomato that's really small, but I think it's going to do well. But that's
why you have cardboard there, because we're using it for sheet mulching.
Yeah,
and straw.
Yeah, I have cardboard, straw, or hay because it helps to keep the moisture down in rather than evaporating out, and it is, you know, protection against weeds. And there's some strawberries that have been transplanted. More strawberries here. Here's some rhubarb, and this rhubarb has gone through a lot of transplanting, but I think it's going to stay put here. It's going to do
Didn't it
really
come from
well.
Layla's?
No,
wait, that one.
I had that way out there.
Oh, okay.
And this is kale, and this is Swiss chard. So the nice thing about Swiss chard is it tends to do okay in the hot weather, whereas all the other greens don't do that well. And I'm going to get hot. Here's some bok choy. It came from Morel's friend. And there is a whole bunch of potatoes here. Next year I'm going to move the potatoes, and I'm going into that raised bed, and I'm going to put a lot of onions here. And that helps protect the other, like the strawberries and so forth. So those are potatoes. And then here's more peas and more. This is a different kind of pea that didn't do as well. And I'm going to let it flower because I'll just add nitrogen different ways. This is a little marvel, which is sweeter, but it's not doing as well as the other pea. Over here I have a lot of snow peas. I have tomatoes and more bush beans. And I have pepper. There's all very tiny because they came from Morale's school from the kids. I didn't buy any. And then I have some kaboka squash growing. It'll do well. I have had lots of experience with kaboka squash. But the last thing I want to show right now is my onion and chive garden. Because here's a wonderful, I've had this for several years, and I brought it from another garden, and it's called Egyptian walking onion. And I started eating this in March. It's very delicious. But what is nice about it is that it's a perennial. And you can do so many, I want to do recipes in my book using some of these foods that nobody knows about. But as you can see, if you show them here, they're producing little onions here. And you can cook with that, or you can just put them back into the ground to grow more of these Egyptian walking onions. But in the early part of the spring, like in mid to March, these are delicious. They're very tender. Here, this one's better. Look. Okay.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Okay, you can see they're little onions, huh? They're really good. And so these are chives, garlic chives. And then here I have white onions. And what I want to try to avoid is the seeds that they don't seed. Because then it takes, when they seed, like I said earlier, it takes the energy goes to producing seeds rather than producing a bigger onion. So I'm taking out this. In July, these probably may be ready to eat. But I'm getting experience with onions. There's a lot to know about onions, and I've enjoyed them. And it's nice for me because here in Pueblo West, there's so many deer, there's so many rabbits and other squirrels, and they won't eat the onions. And that's why I can keep it out here. Okay, well anyway, that's it. So happy solar eclipse.
And
let's
soon
bring in the
solstice
new-
and then super new moon or
Oh,
super
yeah,
moon at the end of the month.
solstice is coming in, and so anyway, this is a time of celebrating the new, and just enjoy that. You know, transforming and transmuting and grounding. Like that was my theme, is grounding and transmuting and transforming. Namaste.